All right, so let's jump into it today. We're going to be focusing on a potential strike by council workers in Peterborough, England.
Okay.
And the article we're looking at today comes from Peterborough Matters, which is a local news outlet. And the headline is pretty eye-catching. It says, "A Christmas miracle is needed to stop this strike."
Hmm. Makes you wonder what's going on over there.
Well, first we need to get a sense of who exactly we're talking about here. So it's essential workers, right?
Yeah.
Street cleaners and library staff, the folks who keep the leisure centers running. But here's the thing. They aren't directly employed by the Peterborough City Council.
Oh, okay.
They work for a company called Peterborough Limited,
Okay.
which is owned by the City Council.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit of a strange setup.
Uh,
So these workers, through their union, the GMB, are saying that they got a way smaller pay raise than people employed directly by the City Council. And they're calling the offer insulting. The article even quotes an anonymous GMB member who says, "This used to be a decent job, hard, but the pay was pretty good. Now we're basically on minimum wage. I could get more stacking shelves in the blank and get this dry, and no one will try to run me over."
wow.
I know. That quote kind of says it all.
Yeah.
These people are feeling really undervalued, especially given the risks they're facing out there every day.
Right.
Yeah, the GMB is not holding back either. They're calling this whole thing the nightmare before Christmas, and saying that the city council is acting like the Grinch that stole our members' pay.
Okay. So they're not mincing words.
Definitely not. They are ready for a fight. The union is making it very clear that if there isn't a better offer soon, they are prepared to strike in the new year.
Wow.
So where does Peterborough Limited stand on all of this?
Well, they're saying they offered a 3.67% pay raise, which is, they say, higher than the current 2.3% inflation rate.
Okay.
And they point out that for their lowest paid workers, this is almost a 50% increase since 2019.
But doesn't that big jump since 2019 maybe suggest that wages were pretty low to begin with?
Yeah, that's a good point. Makes you wonder about their whole pay structure over there.
For sure. They also mentioned facing budget constraints
Yeah.
because their funding ultimately comes from, you guessed it, the city council.
Oh, so they're getting money from the same place that gave its direct employees a bigger raise?
Exactly. And the union is calling them out on that.
Of course.
They're saying that Peterborough Limited is being treated like a separate entity only when it suits the city council.
Right.
So it looks like they want to have it both ways. All the benefits of outsourcing, but none of the responsibility.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It feels like somebody's trying to get away with something, doesn't it? Like, who's really accountable here?
Absolutely. That is a great question. And it's a theme that we'll definitely be getting into more as we go deeper into this whole thing. What stands out to you as really important so far?
Well, for me, it's the potential conflict of interest for the city council. I mean, they own Peterborough Limited, but treat it as separate when it comes to pay.
Right.
Makes you wonder how much freedom the company really has.
Yeah. Are they genuinely trying to save money? Or is this just a way to keep wages down for certain workers?
Mm.
That's what we need to figure out. We'll keep digging into this and look at what it all means for the workers and the entire community in part 2.
As we look deeper into the situation in Peterborough, it's important to understand the wider context of outsourcing in the UK. Like, has it actually worked in other places? And, what are the arguments for and against it?
Those are great questions. So outsourcing has been getting more and more common in the UK for a while now.
Yeah.
It's often presented as a way for local governments to make things more efficient and save money, right?
Right.
Proponents say that it can lead to better services because you have experts handling specific things.
Yeah, I've heard that. But critics will often say that working conditions and wages actually decline. It creates like a two-tiered system where outsourced workers do these essential jobs, but are treated worse than people employed directly.
And that links directly back to what we're seeing from the GMB in Peterborough, right?
Yeah.
It's like they're saying, hey, the city council wants all the good stuff from outsourcing without taking care of the workers.
Exactly. It's like short-term gain, but long-term consequences.
Exactly. What about the impact on the community, though? What happens to the people of Peterborough if there is a strike?
That's a really important question. We're talking about essential services here, right?
Yeah.
Libraries and leisure centers, street cleaning. These are things that people rely on every single day.
And imagine the disruption if the garbage isn't being collected. That could be a real health hazard.
Absolutely. It could create a lot of anxiety for people, and they might lose trust in the city council.
Definitely.
Yeah.
People might start to question what the council's priorities really are if basic services are being disrupted while other council employees are getting better pay and benefits.
Exactly. It puts the city council in a tough spot, doesn't it?
Yeah. They've probably got real budget pressures,
Right.
but they also risk upsetting a lot of their workers and potentially damaging their relationship with the whole community.
And the GMB knows that. They're using really strong language, like comparing the situation to the Nightmare Before Christmas and calling the council the Grinch.
Right.
That's a very deliberate tactic to show people what could happen to the community.
Like they're saying, look, if you don't fix this, everyone's going to suffer. And speaking of suffering, we haven't even really touched on the economic impact, have we?
Right. What's the financial cost of all this going to be for Peterborough?
If services are disrupted, businesses could lose money. Like
Yeah.
shops and restaurants near a closed library or leisure center might see fewer customers.
Oh, definitely.
And then there's the cost of actually resolving the strike negotiations, legal fees, all of that adds up.
It seems like everyone could lose in this situation. But there's another layer of complexity here that we haven't really talked about. Accountability. If things go wrong, who do the people hold responsible?
That's such a good point. It's even harder to answer when the lines are so blurred between the city council and Peterborough Limited.
Right.
Is it the council's fault for outsourcing in the first place? Or is it the company's fault for not meeting the needs of its workers?
It just creates confusion about who's in charge, you know?
Yeah, it makes it difficult for people to speak up and demand better. They might not even know who to talk to. This brings us back to a really big question. Is outsourcing, the way it's being done now, really a sustainable way to deliver essential public services?
That is the million-dollar question, and it goes way beyond just Peterborough.
So we've been talking about this strike in Peterborough, but, it feels like this is just one example of a much bigger problem in the UK.
It really does. What happens here could have a huge impact on other local governments and outsourced workers all across the country.
It's like, imagine what happens if the GMB wins. Other unions see that and think, hey, we could do that too.
Right.
And then suddenly you have essential services being disrupted everywhere. Councils wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, it'd be a real mess for them, especially with the budgets they're already dealing with.
Yeah, exactly. So what does this mean for the future of outsourcing? Is this a wake-up call?
I think it definitely shows that we need to be more careful. We can't just think of outsourcing as an easy way to save money.
Right.
We have to consider the impact on the workers and the community as well.
It's all about finding that balance between saving money and being fair. And like we've seen in Peterborough, that's not always easy.
And people need to know how these decisions are being made.
Yes.
They need to know what's being done to protect the workers and make sure services are still good.
It shouldn't feel like something's being hidden, right? Like workers' rights are being traded for a smaller budget.
Exactly. This situation also brings up the question of, well, who's really in charge? If a service is messed up because of a problem with an outsourced company, who do people complain to?
It shouldn't be a blame game. Everyone needs to know who's responsible for making sure those essential services are working.
This all comes down to a really basic question. What do we care about most as a society? Is it just about being efficient and saving money? Or do we care about our communities and the people who keep them running?
I think that's a really important question to ask. We've covered so much in this deep dive, haven't we? We started with a possible strike in Peterborough, and now we're looking at the whole picture of outsourcing in the UK.
It really shows how even something that seems local can have huge effects and make us think about what kind of society we want to be.
Exactly. We've heard from the workers, the union, the company, and the city council. We talked about the potential impact on the community and the economy. But now we have a question for you, the listener.
As you think about all of this, ask yourself, how can we make sure that trying to be efficient and save money doesn't end up hurting people in our communities?
That's something we all need to think about as we move forward. And that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.